Welcome to Commanding on a Budget. Today's budget pick is Deep Analysis. Drawing 4 cards for 6 mana and 3 life at sorcery speed doesn't seem that great, but this card lets you spread that out over 2 turns. Not to mention this card is great in graveyard-based decks that might mill it. Straight out of Theros, Purphoros, God of the Forge, is a general that can throw insane amounts of damage at each of your opponents, 2 at a time. All you need to do is make creatures. If your devotion to red ever goes up to 5 or more, he gets to join in the attack, and a 6/5 indestructible creature is hard to deal with. Your excess mana can even turn into fire breathing for your entire team. The damage output of Purphoros cannot be understated, and often if your opponents blink, they'll suddenly find themselves with very low life totals and a squad of angry red creatures bearing down on them. This deck can be built for about $50. When you think of mono red and lots of creatures, what's the first thing that comes to mind? Why, it's goblins, of course. And when each goblin means 2 damage to each opponent, those little critters become even more dangerous. Beetleback Chief, Goblin Marshal, Mog War Marshal, Siege Gang Commander, and Warbreak Trumpeter. The best types of goblins are the ones that bring more goblins along with them. Chancellor of the Forge. In conjunction with Purphoros, this Chancellor can serve as a game ender if your board is full of creatures. Krenko Mob Boss. If left unchecked, Krenko can produce oodles of goblins, which in turn can lead to oodles of damage. Ib Halfheart Goblin Tactician. His fantastic flavor text aside, Ib makes blocking a nightmare for your opponents, and in the late game, your excess mountains can turn into even more goblins. Caterwauling Boggart. Especially powerful with Ib, this creature can also force through legions of unblockable goblins. Squee Goblin Nabob. He just refuses to go away. Goblin Chieftain and Goblin King. Of the many goblin lords, these are the 2 most powerful, as they can give your entire team of goblins either haste or evasion. Hellraiser Goblin. When the point of your deck is to attack your opponent until they're dead, Hellraiser Goblin doesn't actually have a downside. Mogcatcher. While he isn't a goblin himself, he can find any goblin you might need for only 3 mana. Goblin Matron. Another goblin tutor with a body, and it often finds Goblin Recruiter. The ability to make sure that you're drawing goblin after goblin is borderline insane. This guy certainly won't make you any friends if you line up your top decks right. Goblin Ringleader. This creature's time to shine is after you've used Recruiter to stack your deck with goblins, filling your hand with threats. Skirk Prospector. Turn goblins into mana and cast big spells with ease. Skirk Fire Marshal. His ability can solve most problems, and best of all, both he and Purphoros will still be around once you've burned your opponent's boards. Zozu the Punisher makes your opponents suffer for playing lands. Who cares about your own life total when you're playing a mono red deck anyway? Goblin Ruin Blaster. Non-basic land destruction on a hasty body. Goblin War Driver pumps your team of creatures with Battle Cry. Goblin Bushwhacker. When this guy and his powerful kicker make an appearance, the game is probably going to be over soon. Patron of the Aki. Another strong Battle Cry effect on a creature that can be cast at instant speed for very little mana. Pyrewild Shaman. Repeatable Blood Rush to mess with combat math, as well as being Squee number 2. Spike Shot Elder. With multiple ways to increase his power, this innocuous little goblin can rapidly become a deadly sniper. Sting Scourger. With an ability that rarely appears in red, Sting Scourger can catch an opponent off guard by taking out a key blocker. Goblin Replica. A colorless goblin that can take care of annoying artifacts quite easily. Goblin Assault. While your goblins might not always survive combat, 2 damage each turn with Purphoros is certainly worth it. Goblin Grenade. Cheap removal that can also serve as a finisher if your opponent is low enough. Goblin Offensive, Goblin Rally, and Empty the Warrens. Sorceries that can both produce a sizable army and bleed your opponents for a large amount of damage. Mog Infestation. When you choose yourself for this spell and Purphoros is on the battlefield, the results can be utterly catastrophic for the other players. Goblin Warrens. While this enchantment's ability only nets you 1 extra goblin, Purphoros turns those tokens into 6 damage for only 3 mana per activation. Aside from its heavy goblin theme, this deck also features many other powerful red creatures that can lead to absurd amounts of damage through Purphoros, combat, or a combination of both. Ingot Chewer. Whether hardcast or evoked, taking care of a powerful artifact such as a Chroma's Memorial can swing the game back in your favor. Mad Prophet. Cycle through unwanted cards to find what you need right now. Anger. Getting him into the graveyard for maximum benefit isn't difficult in this deck. Hammer of Purphoros. It's not a creature, but it gives your creatures haste and can turn extra mountains into sizable tokens. Ogre Battle Driver. Another way to grant your creatures haste, but this time it comes with a power boost. Hellrider. If you're attacking so often, you might as well get an extra point of damage each time you turn a guy sideways. The damage can also take out troublesome planeswalkers quite easily. Hero of Oxid Ridge. Was your opponent planning to block your huge attack with a lot of 1/1 tokens? Surprise! Pyreheart Wolf. He makes blocking difficult not once, but twice. Instigator Gang. On his human side, he gives your creatures battle cry. On his flipped side, he makes an army of 1/1s an immense threat. Hamura Human Ascendant. Another creature that gives all of your creatures a massive benefit when he's flipped. Flame Tongue Kavu. A 4/2 that can kill a lot of utility creatures. Norin the Wary. Bravery was never Norin's strong suit, but he can serve quite well as a consistent source of damage in concert with Purphoros. Fanatic of Mogus. As if dominating your opponent with Purphoros wasn't enough. Hellion Eruption. Remember all those creatures I had? Well, now they're a lot bigger and a whole lot nastier. Tooth and Claw. Trade 2 1/1 goblins for a 3/1, or toss out lots of Purphoros damage in response to an opponent's board wipe. Firecat Blitz. Suddenly, cats. Use with Tooth and Claw or Goblin Bombardment to get even more use and damage out of the cat tokens. Fury Stoked Giant. When combined with an army of hasty creatures or a sea of tokens, the shocks come pouring in when Fury Stoked Giant joins the party. Stone Shock Giant. His monstrosity ability can very easily end games. If your opponent is still kicking even after your relentless assault of creatures and damage, the remaining cards in the deck can help put you over the top. Skull Clamp and Reforge the Soul. Refill your hand and make sure the hits keep on coming. Vandal Blast. Remember when your opponents used to have artifacts? Devil's Play. Burn you once, shame on me. Burn you twice, you're probably dead. Goblin War Drums. Before there was Gruul War Chant, there was this old gem that makes blocking much more difficult. In the Web of War. It's like an enchantment version of Ogre Battle Driver. Bonus points for having both on the field at the same time when you make a ton of creatures. Sulfuric Vortex shuts off annoying life gain and gives you a consistent damage clock. Rage Reflection and Savage Beating. I heard Double Strike was powerful, especially when all of your creatures have it. Goblin Bombardment. When all else fails, just throw your creatures directly at your opponent's face and hope for the best. Now for the deck's lands. Urza's Factory and 35 Mountains. The non-budget acquisitions. All of the non-budget cards for this deck are even more powerful goblins. Kiki Jiki Mirror Breaker can make copies of any of your powerful creatures, which gives you more Purphoros damage as well. Goblin War Chief. Cheaper goblins with haste can give you a large board in very little time. Goblin Lackey, Goblin Wizard, and Warren Instigator can put all your goblins directly from your hand onto the battlefield, which saves you mana and triggers Purphoros as well. Goblin Sharpshooter. He can machine gun down all of your opponent's 1 toughness guys with ease, and he gets silly with sacrifice outlets. Lightning Crafter. Tossing out a lightning bolt every time you untap can add up the damage very quickly, and there are more than enough goblin tokens to champion. You should build this deck if the idea of causing lots of damage to all your opponents at once makes you feel tingly inside. You enjoy playing tons of creatures but don't care if they stay alive. You're not afraid to attack and attack frequently. Goblins are your style. Many decks are content to sit back and set up big combos to win games, but Purphoros is just the opposite. Mono Red is at its best when it's throwing volley after volley of creatures at its opponents, and with the added damage from both of Purphoros' abilities, taking your foes from 40 to 0 can happen very, very quickly. Board wipes can be a problem, but with the amount of haste and sheer power in the deck, keeping the pressure on shouldn't be difficult. What's your favorite way to play Red? Let me know in the comments below, and as always, thanks for watching.